Welcome back. Ray Ferraro, Darren Millard, John Shannon. As NHL training camps open up this week, Ray, is there anything that, other than Vancouver, because you're too close to it being living there and you read about it too much and you hear about it too much, and we're always worried about who the backup goaltender and the fourth setter are in Vancouver.
Yeah,
did they figure that out?
There's a lot of discussion. Always.
Yeah.
Always is, man. Always is.
Is there anything around the league that turns your crank right now that says, hey, that's a great story? Is it Erik Karlsson in Pittsburgh? What jumps out at you?
That's a cool place to start, because you often hear about teams trying to build around their core in a specific age group. Like it doesn't do you much good to add a couple of 33-year-olds to a team whose core is 20. Like, you've already passed the best of the 30.
Is that a message for Kyle Davidson or what?
No, they've got.
I was thinking the same thing.
No, but you know what? I'd love to be Corey Perry or Nick Foligno. Man, how old's Corey Perry? And somebody says, we want you to be a leader and we're going to give you $4 million, and he's a rink rat. He loves the game. So he's like, yeah, I can do this. Like, I would love to have done that. No, it's more of what Pittsburgh's doing. Like, what good does it do Pittsburgh to add players that are going to grow into their game? The core of their team is in their mid-30s. Like, while Sid and Malkin and Letang are still legit stars, because time will get everybody, why not make the best push to be the best team you can be now? And so I thought Karlsson made a hell of a lot of sense. I think Letang is going to be better by doing less. He's going to have to do less. I think that's a big win for them. They're going to be way faster than they were. That was a frustration for Mike Sullivan for sure last year. And as always, with anyone else we talk about around the league, any team, is, how good's their goalie? What can Tristan Jarry be in goal? And I think, Pittsburgh just had to beat Chicago and Columbus. It's not to get into the playoffs last year. And they stubbed their toe in a big way. I think Pittsburgh's a 100-point team this year. I do. And I think they're going to be pretty good. I got to say, I'm pretty excited. I've got the opening game of the season. So we've got Bedard, Connor Bedard's first game in Pittsburgh, and hopefully Mike Sullivan and Luke Richardson will put them out there for the first face-off, because it would be great theater.
I'll tell you what, the Penguins becoming a contender again in that Metro division changes the whole complexion of that division. When you think about it, because there's been a shift, right? Yeah. Carolina's there. We don't know what's going on with Carolina really, because I don't think they've ever addressed their, who's their giant goal scorer. But the Devils and the Rangers, they're supposed to be the best two teams in the division. If Pittsburgh can reemerge, that changes everything, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but I'll debate you on that. I think Carolina is awesome. And they're to me, I'm a huge baseball fan. They're like the Atlanta Braves in the 1990s. They won the division every year, like for the
14 times and won World Series.
Yes, because they didn't have another gear. But for the long 162-game season, you could not get through Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, Avery. You couldn't get through their pitching staff. When it came to the playoffs, that extra gear was missing. That's what I see with Carolina. You're not going to score against them. You're not going to keep up to them. And they still don't have a top-end goal scorer, like a legit, an easy scorer. Yeah. But I still think I think Carolina's at the top of the division again. I think the Devils are going to be a gear better. Now, is their goaltending going to be enough? Like, is Akira Schmid one of those kids that comes in and is awesome in the playoffs, and then the next year, the full year, he takes a half a step back? Is Vanacek find his game because he got overwhelmed in the playoffs? That's a legit question in Jersey. They're going to work in at least one, maybe two younger D. The Rangers are interesting to me because, of course, they went right to the big names, all of them last year, and it didn't work. And that was either going to work or, as I said at the time, fail spectacularly, and which is exactly what happened. But Peter Laviolette's teams generally compete, in particular right when he gets there. And the Rangers are a problem. I mean, the Islanders are going to be a pain in the ass too. They all, they can't win, but they're always a pain, right? Like
Washington should be somewhat better, right?
Well,
I don't know how much.
I would think adding John Carlson to their lineup changes them. You know, I mean, his injury last year was horrific and took them right out of any contention. Tom Wilson missed much of the year with, you know, coming back from ACL surgery. Health to an older team is always a question, but that's not an easy division. And one of the things to remember too in the East this year is Boston's going to leave 35 points on the table that were there last year, and somebody's going to get those points, and that in itself might change the dynamic of where teams could finish.
I don't know who makes it out of the Atlantic. Toronto, I don't think anybody cares about the regular season when it comes to that. But I've got Ottawa trying to figure out what they're going to do, and Detroit what they're going to do.
Hold on,
I don't know.
You've missed
Buffalo.
The one. Where's
Buffalo?
Yeah. Buffalo. I think Buffalo's better than both Ottawa and Detroit. And my brother-in-law's not the coach.
Yeah, it bothers me to agree with you, John, and you're right on both of those points. My brother-in-law is the coach, and I do think Buffalo they were right there last year. But again, your goalie means so much to you. And they chose not to pick up a veteran somewhere, you know, with Craig Anderson finally retiring, and he just he was amazing for them in the role that he played. But you go to Devin Levi and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Eric Comrie, you're like, well, what do you have? Because they're all relatively inexperienced. If I were to rate those teams, I'd go Buffalo, Ottawa, Detroit. Detroit's still just a smidge away for me, but in very short order, that Eastern Conference is going to get turned on its ear, because when these teams hit, they're young and they're going to be deep and they're going to be good.
And quietly, I think, you know, I think the Sabres are going to be a really good team this year. I just think, and it's funny, I think that everybody talks about veteran leadership every once in a while. How important is veteran leadership with that young group of guys, all those first round picks? If Eric Johnson can stay healthy in Buffalo, he will be I think a good voice back on the blue line. And even if it's a situation, Ray, where he doesn't play every game, Eric Johnson can be a voice of sanity for some of those young guys, don't you think?
He can, and he's not going to have to play more than 14 or 15 minutes a game.
Right.
And so that is manageable. You've got, like, Rasmus Dahlin he's a star. Like, it's really funny when you go back a few years and people saying, because there was enough of it. I think he's going to be a flop as a number one pick. And you're like, man, that guy's 20. How could he be
as
Dahlin,
a defenseman, he's 20, yeah.
Yeah, he's 20, and he's overwhelmed, but man, you know, like, it was way too early. I think Dahlin's a star. They're big on the blue line. Like, Samuelson, Shell Samuelson's boy is a monster, hard to play against. Owen Power will be, a step better. They got Connor Clifton. Johnson as well. I think they're pretty good. Like, I think, and they play a style that's uncomfortable for a lot of teams. Like, they'll play you 5-4 whether you want to or not, and you're not going to beat Buffalo 2-1 very often. And so maybe that maybe drags your team, not the Vegas, but drags a team out of the way they really want to play, because, man, we got to get 4, because 2's probably not doing it either.
Somebody told me that Buffalo won't be able to win in the playoffs that way. I'm like, who cares? Who's thinking about winning the Stanley Cup right now? get to the playoffs, be exciting, establish an organization and some good will around and good feelings and vibe around the organization, and make some progress. I like the way they play. I think it's great for our game.
It is, and why worry about the fifth step when you're not at the first step?
Right.
Like just get there, and then what's going to end up happening is they'll get there, and then they'll identify which players can adjust to that style and that intensity, and they'll evaluate that. And then players will come in and players will go, but you've now built a team that's a playoff quality team. And I think for almost every team, that's kind of the way it goes. Rarely does a team get to the playoffs and smash it out of the park right away.
Right.
There's another step in there.